Hi, I'm Emily.
And I'm Mary.
Welcome to Chatterbox Box, an F1 podcast.
Box.
Hi everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of Chatterbox Box, where Emily and I chat and giggle about all things F1.
Yes, this is our 14th episode. Welcome back, everyone. And it's going to be an exciting one. I am so excited to talk about the Australian GP.
I am too. I think before we get to that, though, there's just a couple of recent news that we wanted to get through, and then content of the whole race weekend. Do you want to kick us off with the chicken shop date?
Yes, so Lando Norris was on the chicken shop date. If you all don't watch the chicken shop date, her name is Amelia, and she is based in the UK, I believe. And she will take celebrities and they'll go on a little chicken shop date where they go to a low end, like fast food chicken shop place. And she has very dry, like flirty banter. So usually every interview she does is hilarious. And this was her first F1 driver. So Lando Norris was on there and it was an interesting episode and it made a lot of the Lando fan girlies very upset.
Tell me why, because as a semi-Lando girly, I liked it.
He is a lot of people's favorite. I would say he's up there with Charles Leclerc. He's up there with Daniel Ricciardo as people's top driver. So people were a little heated about the chicken shop date because that is a more like mainstream form of media. And so people are like, oh my gosh, like we need to gatekeep Lando. I, however, really liked it. I'm very much here for the mainstreamification of Formula One. I think mostly because you and I are not really the traditional sports fans, and we got into this and really loved it. And so I would love for other people to have the similar experience of watching the chicken shop date, being like, who is this guy? And then going down the F1 rabbit hole. I wonder if it could be a similar trajectory as our experience reading the Dirty Air books and then getting into F1. So I think, the more the merrier. I thought it was enjoyable. I wasn't like, ha, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. But I thought it was cool that he put himself out there and did a different kind of like interview technique. What did you think?
I loved it in the sense that this was a very strategic move, both for Amelia and the chicken shop date, and for Lando and F1. Obviously, if you know Lando, if you love F1, if you love McLaren, you're going to watch the chicken shop date with Lando. On the other side, if you love Chicken Shop Date and if you love Amelia's content, you're going to be like, oh, who is this guy? He's kind of cute. He played the very awkward boy very well. So people are going to look into that, especially if they're not a Formula One fan, and they're going to potentially be intrigued. So there's going to be engagement from both sides, and I can't wait for the day where more people are into Formula One so that selfishly I can talk about Formula One and maybe people can identify the merch that I'm wearing so that I can talk about Formula One even more than I already do.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think as F1 girlies, we need to collectively be careful of not recreating the same energy that we get from the traditional fans who are like, ugh, fangirls are ruining the sport. Drive to Survive is ruining the sport. Like, let's not give that energy to other people who may get into F1 through the chicken shop date. I think it's cool. The more the merrier.
Obviously, yes. I am a girl's girl. If anyone wants to get into Formula One, the chicken shop date is obviously a very good way to start.
Yeah, especially if you want to be a Lando girly. Who else would you like to see on the chicken shop date if she brought in more F1 drivers? I have a feeling it was like a one and done situation because she really does get people from all walks of entertainment and sports. But who would you like to see if she did another one?
Oh my gosh. I feel like just Being a Charles Leclerc girly through and through, I would need to see him on this chicken shop date. I think he would actually go into this date and just feel the vibes. I think he would play into the awkwardness and they would try really hard maybe not to giggle at each other, which then would feed into my delusion. What about you?
Yeah.
Would you go for Lewis?
Actually, no. I would like to see Esteban Ocon because I think Esti loves leaning into a bit and he would eat that up. I also would love to see George Russell because I think we often talk about how George Russell is like a gossip girl. And I think he would just be so funny in an interview like that. I think he could match her humor really well or respond to it with like his own unique humor. And it would just be like funny to see them bounce off each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was my first time watching the chicken shop date, and I loved Amelia's humor. It can go either way because her humor is so dry and she kind of pokes fun at the person she's on the date with a little bit.
Mhm.
It can be either really successful, especially if you lean into that, or it could come off really awkward. I think Lando was a little bit uncomfortable about the situation. I think he's very used to being like the swooner and not the person that is actually being flirted with, which
Mhm.
I've enjoyed seeing the other side of him. But
Yeah.
not to get like off tangent, but I watched her date with Jennifer Lawrence, and
Mhm.
I think Amelia tried so hard to make Jennifer uncomfortable, and Jennifer just like one upped her, and I was like, wow, this is top tier content.
Yeah. She was like, you can't one up me. But yeah, I think I would definitely go with George. I would love to see George on the chicken shop date or a similar type of interview.
Agreed, agreed. Talking about George, I think this past race weekend, it was a little bit uncomfortable for him. There was a moment where his privacy was invaded in the restroom. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so this was actually like really bad. I don't want to say their name because they did take the video down, so I don't really want to direct more views their way. But I'm pretty sure it is illegal to film someone in a bathroom without their consent. So I am curious to see if they will be facing legal charges. But essentially, it's just a video of two guys standing at a urinal from the back. One of them is George Russell, the other one is one of these creators. The next clip is the guy that was standing next to George being like, I just peed next to George Russell. And people were like, what? The thought process to like film this, edit this, and post this, and nowhere in the chain of events did they have the thought process of, oh, maybe I shouldn't post this. Like I said, nothing is visible, but it just feels like such a like creepy invasion of privacy. And I'm very interested to see the impact that this is going to have on content creators going to races because I think there's been a big push to start bringing in influencers. And I'm wondering if they're going to put more of like a halt to that because this was really invasive.
Yeah, that whole story gave me the ick, obviously, for many reasons, because it's such an awkward moment to feel like you have the right to always be recording like celebrities. Yes,
Mhm.
they love to say hello, they love to sign merch, but there's a time and a place for that. I definitely don't think that a restroom where you're doing your business is the time or the place. Like,
Mhm.
second of all, there's also like men etiquette where you're actually not supposed to use the stall right next to one another. That just gives me another ick. I
Yeah.
understand it because there's not really a big barrier of privacy. So being able to be as far away from one another is very important. So
Mhm.
I feel like he violated so many things in that whole interaction,
Mhm.
and I would hate to be any of the Formula One drivers at the moment. We did see that, like, after Max DNF'd. He was kind of walking with security towards the back of the garage. I am curious if that was typical, if it's like one of those things where as a driver, because of all of the fans, especially with that one moment where Charles was just bombarded
Mhm.
with his fans, that more security is available, or if that was a direct kind of reaction to the restroom incident.
Yeah, I don't know if we're like hyper focused on it now because we're like, wait, where was the security for George? But I don't think I've ever seen a driver walking with two people next to them wearing a shirt that says event security. It kind of did feel like a response to what had happened. I also think I'm just so baffled by this because George Russell is such a nice, accommodating guy to the fans. Like, they surely could have just stopped him once he left the bathroom and asked him to film a video with them, and he probably would have said yes. There's a content creator on TikTok. I wish I remembered her name, but she posted this really funny video from an event in Australia this week where she had George recreate the viral TikTok sound that's like, I want something big. Beyonce. She posted a video about her experience. She had went up to him with the intention of, oh, like, George, will you film this video with me? And his staff or whatever was like, oh, sorry, we're out of time. And she's like, it's totally fine. Started to walk away. And George came after her and was like, wait, no, like, what did you want to film? Like, we can still do it. Which I thought was so nice. He seems like a really genuine guy. And I am so positive that these content creators could have just asked him for a quick, like, 5-second clip once he was done using the urinal. It was so invasive. And it makes me sad because I am sure this is going to have a trickle down impact on content creators that are respectful to the drivers. And that's just disheartening.
Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely manifesting that one of these days you and I would be invited to the paddock so that we could talk to all of our favorite drivers. But this definitely puts a little hamper on it. But just seeing how this situation affected all of the drivers, I'm not sure if they would be completely willing to have more influencers, especially those that might not like Formula One, around this environment, just because like it gave me the ick. I'm sure it definitely gave like George the ick. I don't think
Yeah.
after an experience like that, I would want to use a public restroom ever again.
No, honestly, I'm sure it's going to be a thing that now they're implementing driver only restrooms within the team sections and stuff like that. I think we'll really see if this has any aftermath or impact in Miami. I don't know if there's going to be a big influencer presence in Japan and China, but I know last year there was so many influencers in Miami. So I'm interested to see if they'll have as much free reign around the paddock as they have been having, or if there's going to be a little bit of a tightening of security after this.
Yeah, I can't wait to see. I hope this isn't the end of influencers coming to Formula One races, but definitely would understand if there are more precautionary kind of details behind that.
Yeah, I think, it's important to treat these people like they're people too. I know they're like our favorites and you spend so much money to go to these races and in hopes of meeting them. I mean, I'm pretty sure these content creators got invited to go for free, but I think we just need to remember that no matter the amount of following you have, the amount of money you make, how well known you are, like, people should still be treated with respect and dignity.
Agreed. Shall we get on to the actual races?
Let's talk about the race. Kick us off with free practice one because the chaos of the weekend started in free practice one and then never stopped.
Oh my gosh. I wasn't even planning on tuning into the free practices just because this week has been a little bit hectic, but I am so glad I did because in free practice one, Alex Albon crashed his car essentially around the same turn as 2023. I think it was turn 6.
Mm-hmm.
And that effectively caused a red flag to appear. I'm glad that no one got hurt. Alex was definitely okay, but the rear wing and spoiler got damaged. The front chassis also got a bit of damage. And unfortunately, because of that, They didn't have an extra chassis on the Williams team. And I am like honestly still annoyed by this. After free practice 1, they ended up skipping free practice 2, or Alex did, just to see what could be done. But by the end of it, it was determined that Alex was going to take Logan's car. Now, I understand Logan is not a strong driver by any means. However, he is not the one that crashed his car. So why? I understand that it was definitely more strategic in terms of who would give Williams the best kind of chance to score points. And I think during this time, it is very difficult to score points. Like you have 5 teams, maybe 4 teams that are without points. And Alex Albon definitely does seem like a big contender to be able to help with that. But in comparison, Logan has been improving and he has been on par with Alex. So it was just so upsetting. I think the only reason why they were able to do this was that there was something in Logan's contract that allowed for this type of situation, or there was a clause, or there was a gap. Honestly, I think his lawyer sucks to be able to have missed that, but honestly, very upset about that whole situation. I think Logan took it very gracefully and understood that it's for the team. But if that were me, I would be throwing a whole fit.
Yeah, I would be livid. So in FP1 prior to the crash, Alex was in 12th position and Logan was in 14th. And then for FP2, Alex didn't race and Logan was in 13th. So I do understand, okay, historically, Logan has not had the pace that Alex has. But this isn't, to me, significant enough of a difference in the FPs to justify let's give away Logan's car. Alex got in 12th and then Logan got in 13th and 14th. That's not that drastic of a difference. And we know that this season, the Alpines really suck. I think we know Sauber's not doing so great. So I think that there's a really good chance that Logan could have maintained at least like 14th, 15th. Obviously, they wanted to be in the points, but I just don't understand the thought process behind like Alex is in P12, so he has a good chance of getting into the points. Whereas like Logan was in 13th, so he kind of had an equally good chance of getting into the points. So like I do understand they're making this decision based off of historical context and last season and all that kind of stuff, but I cannot imagine how much this crushed Logan's confidence. It must be such a horrible feeling to know that your team has such little faith in you that they're going to prioritize giving a car to the person who just crashed in the same spot they've previously crashed. I know that this is a very, very, very competitive sport, and there's only 20 people racing in this sport right now. But if this was like my regular job, I would be on Indeed looking for a new job because I would just find that so disrespectful.
Yeah, and I think Max also felt the same way. I think the quote goes, if that were to happen to me, I would completely flatten my car so no one can drive. I hate to say it because I know I'm not a big Max fan, but he and I had the same exact sentiment
Yeah.
because I would be so petty. I would be like, oh, yeah, like you really want someone else to drive my car?
Mm-hmm.
Think again.
Yeah. I think Logan handled it so well. He's such a classy guy. He didn't make any petty comments. He didn't even act irritated. He still showed up. He was fully present. He met with fans. He engaged in meet and greets and interviews and blah, 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 blah. I would be like, I'm leaving. I'm not sitting here and watching someone race my car. I understand legally he probably had to stay and they needed like a reserve driver in case anything happened. But oh, it felt so disrespectful to me. And as, you know, newfound Logan fans here on this podcast, I am a little worried about what this means for the rest of his career, because if your own team doesn't think you're good enough to drive your own car, if Williams doesn't keep him next year, who's going to take him? I feel like that just put a complete dent in his longevity, which is really sad. I hope that I'm wrong. I hope I'm looking too much into it. And I hope that this kind of gives Logan some of that energy that Carlos is having, and he channels it into a Logan Sargent revenge era, and we see him in the points before Alex.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I definitely understand, coming from James Val's perspective, how difficult of a decision that could have been for a
Mhm.
team principal, especially knowing that this could have gone better if they had another chassis to replace Alex's. But I think, just in terms of manufacturing and planning and trying to improve the car,
Mhm.
there just was a bit of a miss, which is a little bit unfortunate, because Australia seems like one of those races where you want to be adequately prepared, because you never know what you're going to get. So definitely not the way to go.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point, because Alex crashed there last year. So maybe plan ahead, bring some extra supplies. I just can't even imagine the team dynamic and the workplace morale after something like that for Logan. And I hope that they are kind of like working overtime to make him feel respected and valued at the team, because whoo, what a harsh decision for him. I feel bad. I like Alex. I really like Williams in general. I've been grappling all weekend with, do I agree with this decision? Do I not agree with this decision? I understand this decision, but I think it was unfair. And I think those two things can exist at the same time.
I agree. Do you think any other team, given the same circumstance, would do something similar to
No,
Williams?
absolutely not. I was actually thinking about that, and I was like, I cannot picture any other team doing this to anyone. The only team I could maybe think is McLaren. We did kind of see something similar in the race, not to jump ahead to the race, but they did ask Oscar to let Lando pass. I think that is the extent that we would see. Like, okay, let them pass. I don't think we'd see other teams be like, give them your car. That's wild.
Okay, I have a different thought. I think Red Bull would 100%
Mm,
give Checo's, or like the second driver's car, to Max if they did not have any other like hardware or other components that they needed to fix Max's car in time. We'll get into it, I think, later on in the race as well, but maybe they proved me wrong. Maybe everyone's contracts are sound tight and they can't do that.
yeah, I think takeaway from this situation is, Logan, get a new lawyer, please, because I never want to see that happen to you again.
No, no. And I think, moving on from like free practice to quali, the only other point that I really had was that Lewis did actually take some risks with his
Mm,
car. And he said, this is the worst experience ever. I think both in free practice one and practice two. And unfortunately, it didn't pan out. One of the very like interesting things about the Mercedes car this year is that it is so unpredictable. It is throwing all of Mercedes in for a loop. Like, they think they understand the car and they're like whispering sweet nothings to it, and then all of a sudden it like it just flips 180 and they are unable to read the car and determine what the heck is up.
yeah, I don't know what's going on. It seems like they know Lewis is out the door, so let's play operation on his car and kind of play around with things and let George have more of a solid time. Because I think George has been pretty more consistent this season so far. So I'm curious to know if that is what's going on. Lewis doesn't seem like that bothered by it. I think, again, because he knows he has one foot out the door, and he is seeing Ferrari absolutely thrive this season. So he's like, you know what? I'll come in, I'll try. We can tweak some things here and there, but I'm not that worried about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it plays into George's perspective on this. I think George has said he feels more confident about this car than Lewis does. And George can play with the unpredictability with the car a little bit more,
Mhm.
whereas Lewis needs a little bit more sense of control with his car. And now that he knows he is unable to control the car in the manner that he wants to, he's
Mhm.
kind of like, yeah, I'll give it my best effort, but it is what it is.
That's so, so real. I think George is maybe getting the preferential treatment of maybe we can tailor the car to George a little bit more now because we know he's here for a bit longer.
I'm happy for him. I'm happy for Lewis that this is his last year with Mercedes as well.
Yeah, same, because I'm so sorry that car is not doing well.
No.
I didn't really have a ton of other thoughts about quali. I'm going to be so real for anyone else out here who's listening who is on the East Coast of the US. I was struggling through this quali. It started at 1 a.m. our time, and for some reason, I made the poor decision of watching it in my bed, and I was just like sporadically falling asleep throughout the entire quali. And I think I was texting you because I was so confused. Like, I kept falling asleep and dreaming about the quali and then waking up and it was still on. And I had a dream that Alex Albon crashed the car again. And then I woke up and he was still there and I was just like so confused. So I would not recommend ever doing that again.
I was struggling too, and I was watching from my couch. I think it was a very predictable quali. I think everyone was in their respective place. The only kind of driver that surprised me, sort of, was Lewis because he made it into Q2, but he was only able to place 11th.
Mhm.
But everyone else, I think it all fell into place. Charles was a little bit off his game. I think he said something about his tires not doing as well as he expected.
Mhm.
So he placed P4, which I thought that he would be in the front of the grid. But you know what? Carlos was up there. Max was obviously up there. So it kind of seemed like we were in for a very typical, like, actual race.
Yeah, the other, I think, big standout from quali was Daniel Ricciardo, who was going to go into Q2, and then his time got deleted for track limits. And I think he got bumped down to 18th or 19th, whereas Yuki went all the way to Q3. I think we'll talk a little bit later after the race about just like our general thoughts about the Yuki and Daniel situation, but that was a little bit of a shocker in quali. But otherwise, for me, I know I definitely turned off quali feeling a little frustrated. I was like, oh my gosh, I just stayed up through this hour of absolute delusion, like falling asleep, waking back up, being so unsure what's going on, just for Max to get pole. And I already know that tomorrow he's just going to zoom ahead and drive off into the distance, like playing Taylor Swift in his car and not caring at all. And so it made me a little bummed out. And I wish that I could go back to that me and be like, girl, just wait, just wait.
Yeah. Are we ready to talk about the race?
Yes, I'm so ready to talk about the race.
Oh my gosh. The fact that we came from quali being like, oh my God, do we need to stay up to watch this
Yeah.
race for an
Yeah.
inevitable Max win? We had even predicted all of our podium winners, and Max was first. And
Mhm.
in parentheses, we were like, obviously.
Yeah.
It was not obvious. It was not
No,
obvious.
it was not. I even texted you when I texted you to ask for your predictions. I was like, "What's your P2 through P4 prediction?" We already know what's going to happen. I wasn't even manifesting. I wasn't even letting myself become delusional. It's fine. I'm just going to focus on P2 through P4. Good luck, Max. Have a good day. Whatever. Is this the law of detachment happening in real life? Is it when we stop caring and we stop putting energy into caring about Max winning? This is the reward that we get.
Maybe, because even in our Discord chat, I was like, P1B is Carlos. Like, I was a little bit Delulu, but I was reasonably Delulu
Mhm.
because P1A was going to be Max. Now, we were totally wrong Going into this race, Carlos overtook Max, I think almost immediately, like I think at turn 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I screamed. I think the Discord screamed. You screamed. We were like, no freaking way.
I need you to recreate the look on your face when Carlos overtook Max in Australia.
Okay, so I was cuddled in blankets and I was like on my phone and I was like, and then I was like, my jaw completely dropped. It stayed dropped until I was 100% sure that Max DNF'd. And even then, I was like, is this real? Am I dreaming? This must be another alternate universe because that could not have happened.
No, that's so real. I was like sitting there, I was on the couch texting, and I just went, what? And then my jaw was literally on the floor. I almost fell off the couch. I was like, what? What? And I couldn't even type. I was trying to like reply to our group chat and also look at the TV. And then I hear Max saying the car's loose. And I was like, what do you mean the car's loose? What do you mean? What does that mean? And then you see his little graphic just dropping down in the like the place and all the way to the bottom. And I was like, am I still asleep? Is this did I never wake up during quality? What is going on? And I am not kidding. I think my jaw was on the floor until like lap 20. My heart rate was like, like I was so shocked. I don't know if I've ever felt that way in my life. Like I actually cannot compare that feeling to any other feeling I've ever had. I think in this race in Australia, we formed a core memory. I don't think I'll ever forget that. It was one of the like truly most wild moments I think I've ever experienced, like watching something live.
That was so iconic. I think forgot about like the fact that Red Bull had Checo as a driver at one point because it was like Carlos, Charles, and then like Charles and Oscar and Lando, and I was like, oh my god, it's going to be like Ferrari and McLaren. That's so exciting. And then I look down and I'm like, oh yeah, Checo's there too.
Yeah. I was trying to live post on Threads throughout the race. Shout out to Threads. Everybody follow us on the Threads community. I'm going to put in a little screenshot of the post because it was just chaos. I was like manifesting as much chaos as we got for this race last year. And then the next post was like chili pepper. And that's like when Carlos got in front of Max. And then I'm like trying to type, but everything is typo, misspelled. What do you mean the car is loose and can it stay loose? And then my next one was I'm so stressed I can't even type. And the next one, I cannot even explain the reaction I just had in the last 5 minutes. I think my jaw is permanently stuck to the floor. I screamed. I almost fell off the couch. Am I dreaming? Is this real? Help? And I was just like, what's going on? I wish I could have bottled that experience and relived it when we get other non-Red Bull wins this season. I don't think it'll have the same impact because this was just so unexpected. I did not see any other outcome other than Max winning the race when he was starting in pole.
Absolutely. I want to applaud Carlos. He just had an appendicitis surgery. He has been recovering for about 2 weeks.
Mhm.
Even seeing him get out of his car, he's struggling. Like, he's not 100% there. But that man, he like hustled, he booked it. And at one point, I think he even said, yeah, after turn 2, when I overtook Max, I knew. I just felt it in my bones and I'm going to go for it. And I was like,
Mm.
yes. Honestly, I'm so proud of Carlos. I know he must have been struggling with the G forces and all of that. I know appendicitis surgery is fairly easy, it goes pretty smoothly, but just knowing that the G forces can really mess you up, I was totally worried about him. But I guess I didn't really have to worry about him because maybe him losing an appendix meant that he lost enough weight to go fast.
We were joking. Did he offer up his appendix as a sacrifice to some sort of luck god or chaos god to get this result? And if so, do the other drivers want to do that too? Because I'll take it.
There was a meme, I don't know if I can find it, but there was this meme of Charles running, and the caption was like, Charles trying to sell or remove his appendix after seeing Carlos's result.
That is so funny. There is something about F1 community. They are quick with the memes. Every time I'm cackling. So fast.
So fast. I love it.
I genuinely could talk about Max DNFing and Carlos overtaking him for another 5 hours, but I'll spare everyone from my fangirling, and we can move on to what happened to Lewis.
I am so sad. Just one final thought on that. I know Lewis DNF'd, and that is truly a sad moment for the Lewis fans and the Mercedes fans. But honestly, that was a sacrifice I was willing to accept just for the Max DNF. Now, I don't know what happened with Lewis. I am glad he was fine. At one point, he was just rolling in neutral on the side of the track. And I was like, are they going to call for something? Because that is dangerous.
Yeah, I was really surprised that there wasn't a red flag. I think he got off the track and like off to a safety exit lane, whatever they're called. And so that's great. But I was just like you, I'll take it. Okay. It's okay. I will allow Lewis to exit this race if it means Max is going with him. And I say this with Lewis being my number one driver, like my absolute favorite. It's okay. Lewis, thank you for taking one for the team. I appreciate you. I thought that he was also giving us a safety car on his way out. And I was like, how chaotic can this race be? I was like, what's going to happen? Who's going to crash? Because last year, Australia was chaos. So I was on the edge of my seat. My jaw was still on the ground, by the way, still literally on the ground. I had not recovered from everything that happened. I don't think my heart rate went down until like lap 30. So I was shook. And yeah, I still don't really understand what happened there, but thank you, Lewis, for taking one for the team. I thought this was going to be a WDC DNF race. I was like, is Fernando next? Like, protect Fernando at all costs. Yeah. He made it. He did get a penalty, though, but he made it.
He made it. I think I do remember for Lewis, his power unit was failing, and that was sad. But again, thank you, Lewis, for all of your hard work.
I think after Lewis DNF, not much really happened in this race. I was looking at the screen and I was like, is it only lap 28? Like, what's happening?
It felt like we were about to finish the whole race. I thought we were like near the end.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, okay, this is not even really halfway done. It got a little boring after that. It was pretty standard, no really exciting overtakes. I think there was a little bit of like movement going on in the 9 through 13 section of the grid. The one thing that really stood out to me in that middle part after the DNFs, Sauber, Kick, Stake, Neon Green team, what are y'all doing? What is happening?
What is happening? First, it was Valtteri. And I don't know if he has the worst luck on the grid at the moment, but 3 races back to back, and his pit time was so bad. I feel so badly for Valtteri. But then it happened to Zhou Guanyu. I was like, the same thing. I don't know what's going on in the Sauber team, but there is something amiss. I think they were a little bit confused. At one point, the mechanics were like just throwing something on there and they were like, I think that works. Go ahead. And I was like, no, Absolutely not. You should be confident. You should be like bing bang boom. You should have maybe a 3-second pit stop time. I feel like that's not great, but also not terrible. Those pit stop times were terrible.
Maybe 5 seconds, we'll take it. It has been so bad. I don't know if the team at Steak Kick Sauber was as thrown off as everybody else in the world by Max DNFing that they just like short circuited and couldn't function. But I was just in disbelief, staring at the screen like, is this really happening to Valtteri? And then it happened to Zhou Guanyu. And I was like, what is going on? How is this happening again?
I was so confused because I saw the pit stop and I was like, okay, let's go. And then it just kept playing and I'm like, am I seeing this right? Time was a figment of my imagination at that point because I had thought that we were almost near the end of the race, but we were right in the middle of it. And I was like, hang on, is this for real? And it was so real and it happened twice. I feel so bad.
All I can say is someone's going to lose their job for sure because what is going on?
I think someone is going to lose their job at Red Bull too, because how dare they not give Max his win?
That's true. You know, Jos Verstappen was on the phone real quick. Like, you better fire whoever messed up my son's car right now.
Absolutely. They're like, do a postmortem.
Yeah.
Figure out who did this.
This is true. I did not want to lull myself into a false sense of security because the race was very chill other than those strange pit stops. And it was getting to, the last 6 laps. And I was like, I am not going to tell myself that this is in the bag yet because it went chaotic this time last year. So I will not allow myself to feel secure in the current position of the grid. Anything can happen. And then it was lap 57 of 58, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is it? And then George Russell with the crash just threw me into orbit. It looked so scary. So scary. He was sideways in the middle of the road. And later on, they released the radio of him saying, please call a red flag because he's in the middle of the road sideways. He can't really get out of the car without assistance. And people are coming full speed trying to finish the race. And then they also showed the radio of Lance Stroll, who was passing George like right after this happened. And you hear his radio engineer sounding kind of frantic. Slow down, Russell's in the road. And it just looked so scary. Every once in a while, something happens in Formula One that makes you think like, this is a very dangerous sport because that could have went really badly. And I'm so glad he's okay. The earlier DNFs in the beginning of the race were more calm. I wasn't worried about Max's safety or Lewis's safety. It was just like the car malfunctioned and they were both completely fine. This one, I was like actually scared. I was like, are we about to witness something really, really dangerous? So I am so glad he's okay. I don't know how these drivers deal with this. I would be a nervous wreck.
I would too. Honestly, the rest of the race was so boring. I think I was falling asleep, and it wasn't until I heard the broadcasters talking about the crash where I like woke up and I was like, what happened? Because I thought that we were just going to go straight through Carlos, Charles, like Ferrari 1-2. And then I woke up and George's car was just in the middle of the track. And I was like, oh my God, I hope they're calling a red flag. And with that like radio message that was released, even George was frantic. He was like, we need a red flag, like red flag this right now. I am literally in the middle of this track.
So what happened with George, because then I saw Alonso got a penalty for it. So it looks like he was maybe like, he meaning Alonso was lifting his foot off the accelerator, braking, shifting gears and really changing up his driving style very close to the end of the race. I'm not sure why, because I don't believe he was anywhere near contention for a better spot, but it let George close the gap between the two of them a lot quicker than he was expecting, and it caused him to lose control of the car. I don't think I clocked that this entire thing was going on. I didn't even realize Alonso was involved because I was just like so worried about George. So yeah, he did get a penalty for that. He received 3 penalty points and he was demoted to P8, which I believe bumped Yuki up to P7. So that's pretty cool. Congrats to Yuki. So I've noticed a little bit of a weird pattern between Carlos and George Russell. So I just want to say, whatever girly is out there manifesting these wins for Carlos, maybe unlink George Russell from whatever you're manifesting because in Carlos' past 3 wins, he's only had 3 wins. But in Silverstone 2022, Singapore 2023, and Australia 2024, all 3 of those races, George Russell also DNF'd.
No way.
I'm just saying that is very weird. And in Singapore and Australia, George's DNF was in the last 1 to 2 laps of the race. The
No way.
Silverstone DNF was at the very beginning of the race, and I believe it was part of that really big, scary Zhou Guanyu crash that they always show on Drive to Survive. It's becoming a little bit too weird of a coincidence. So this is my calling to whoever is doing this manifestation. Please leave George out of it.
He is our meme king, okay? We
Yeah.
need him.
Justice for George.
Absolutely. Oh, gosh. I cannot believe that Carlos only has 3 wins under his belt because he seems like such a professional, such a good head on his shoulders, and able to adapt to a new strategy in any way he sees fit so that either him or the team can win. I just loved the cute little radio messages we got at the end. My favorite one is him saying, "Tell Charles to come close to me and we'll celebrate this one together." I was like, that is a good teammate. Oh
So
my
cute.
God, so cute.
So cute.
So
My
cute.
favorite little post-race radio moment from him is he goes, "Life is incredible sometimes." I actually teared up a little bit at that. I can imagine that there were many, many times over the past few months that Carlos was thinking, life sucks. Life really sucks. I lost my job. No one even told me. I'm really like racing for my life right now, trying to get a job. And then, of course, my appendix burst, and now I have to sit this race out, go get surgery, missing out on another chance to showcase my abilities when I don't have a job next year. I am sure that there have been so many times over the past 2 months that he has been thinking, life sucks. So to just hear him on the radio saying life is incredible sometimes, it was so heartwarming, and I loved seeing his win. On a funnier note, I also loved the little quote he said in one of his post-race interviews. He was like, "I would recommend that all of the drivers take out their appendix."
I love Carlos being a winner. I just think it's so incredible. I know this win means a lot more to him than we can even imagine, but this win definitely helps him, sell himself to be a driver at any other team. I'm sure any other team would love having him there. And also, I just love this world where I'm imagining Fred Vasseur just kicking himself in the butt. Wow, I really wanted to sign Lewis on and say goodbye to Carlos. Not saying that Lewis sucks. Like, I genuinely do think that the Mercedes cars and the way he drives is just not matching up. And that could be due to Mercedes prioritizing George. So I think that once Lewis comes to Ferrari, it's going to be fine, and he's going to get his flowers, and he's going to win, and he's going to feel unstoppable. But just in this moment, I'm like, wow, I'm sure the Ferrari team is kicking themselves right now because they have a fantastic driver, especially because he was the only other driver other than Red Bull to have won a race in 2023. And again, like this year, that's incredible.
Yeah, I think if the car stays this good, there's a really good chance that we will see Lewis get his 8th World Drivers' Championship at Ferrari. I have been having a little thought in my head that you're not going to like. And I don't like having it either. But part of me is like, did they make the wrong decision keeping Charles over Carlos?
Oh,
Only
I
time will
know.
tell. Only time will
I
tell. It
know.
is too early in the season, and I think that Charles is performing really well this season so far. He's been on the podium every race so far, right? So too soon to tell. But
Too
I
soon to
did
tell.
have a little thought in my head of I don't know, maybe they should have kept Carlos.
That was a toxic thought. I've also had that thought, but I also can't imagine Charles going anywhere else. Like, he
Yeah.
is Ferrari, period.
Where do you think after this race, where do you think Carlos is going next year?
Oh my gosh. Like, I think he has a shot at Mercedes. He has a shot at Red Bull. I'm not sure though. Like, with Checo, I think it was very obvious this race that, like, even though he struggled and he tried to hustle,
Mhm.
he couldn't get like the points that were expected as a Red Bull driver. And I think given like Carlos's outcomes, there's a possibility that Carlos would go to Red Bull to support
Mhm.
Max, at least for another year.
Yeah, that was the thought going through my head last night. Are they going to give Checo's seat to Carlos? I would love to see Max and Carlos going head to head in the same machinery because I think Carlos has been giving Max a run for his money in a slightly less great car. And I would love to see them in the same car and to see what he can do with that. However, I don't want to have to support Red Bull. So I would rather see him go to Red Bull than Mercedes because I just think Mercedes is not getting it together, maybe in 2026, but I think he deserves a really good car, having been the only one to get us a win in quite a few races.
Yeah, absolutely. And comparing Max's drive to Carlos's drive, there is an Instagram account. I don't remember what it is at the top of my head, but they run through the actual race and they actually put it on top of the cars.
Mhm.
And it is honestly so close most of the time. It is almost neck and neck to the point where they're literally right on top of each other in terms of the graphics. And it isn't until the very slow turns or the very challenging turns that you can actually see Max's car pull away. But
Mhm.
they are so competitive with each other. And I think Max and Carlos being on Red Bull would be so iconic.
Yeah.
I might be willing to get Red Bull merch
No,
for
that's
Carlos,
taking it a little bit too far. Carlos
maybe for a
neutral
year.
merch with no Red Bull associated.
Just number 55.
Yeah, basically just a giant 55 on your shirt. I do know that they used to be teammates back in the day,
Yes.
way, way back in the day on Toro Rosso. Yeah. But speaking of people who don't have a job and really deserve one, I loved seeing Gunther Steiner be the one doing the interviews with everyone on the podium. I was not expecting that and I screamed.
I was not expecting that either. And when I heard the broadcasters say that they're going to cut to Gunther to talk to the podium winners, I was like, Gunther, yes. And honestly, seeing him talk to the drivers just made my absolute day. It looks like a job that is perfect for him. Obviously, he loves Formula One, he loves the experience, but I think he loves like the chattiness and like the gossip part of it and just understanding what was going on in all of the drivers' heads.
Mhm.
This is just the perfect job for him. I am so glad that he's able to talk to all of the drivers and I don't know, he just looks so natural.
Yeah, I had no idea he was going to be on F1 TV. So that was such a welcome surprise, really heartwarming. I loved seeing him and I was giggling watching him talk to Charles because Charles could not understand a word he was saying.
I was so confused because I typically have a hard time with accents. I can understand Gunther 95% of the time, but it was just so cute. Charles just being like, huh? Sorry, what was that? And Gunther was like, there was this one awkward pause where you couldn't see Gunther's face, but it was just like quiet. And then
Mhm.
Gunther was like, so you're gonna go party with your friends, right? And then Charles was like, yeah, yeah, huh? Sure.
Gunther's like, "Can I get an invite?"
He's like, I made you guys. I made you
Can I
guys
come?
famous.
I hope that he does every post-race interview now. I loved it. I do love when we occasionally get Nico Rosberg doing the interviews and I get to see him and
Yeah.
Lewis interact. That always makes me giggle. But speaking of Gunther, our, former Haas team principal, Haas kind of killed it this race.
I know. They got a 9-10. It doesn't roll off the tongue as a 1-2, but they got a Haas 9-10. And I am so happy for them. I thought that they were going to do like the similar strategy because they had swapped drivers so that Nico could be the driver in the front, and I thought that we were going to get another K-Mag train, but there was a big enough gap, I think, that they were just going to roll with it and just fight for 10th. And I think with all of the DNFs and everything that had happened, K-Mag was able to slide through and get his point, which I am so happy for him. So well deserved to Haas. I think they are doing an incredible job.
Do we get free Chipotle today? Or is that little promotion over?
Let's just hit both of them up and see if they're going to give us free Chipotle.
Yeah, let me just DM K-Mag and be like, hey, King, can I get the Chipotle promo code?
That's still happening, right?
I think that this has been our most giggly episode in a while. I think probably everybody listening can feel that our energy is like up here. We are euphoric. I think we both really needed this race. And it's just following that good momentum we got from Ollie Behrman racing and getting to pick up on that good energy. And then seeing this just makes me feel more hopeful about the rest of the season. So I'm very excited, but I do want to have a little bit of an analysis, like a serious chat about our findings from this race. So we talked a lot at the beginning of the episode about the decision to give Alex Albon Logan's car. As we know, Alex Albon unfortunately did not end in the points. How do you think Logan feels?
I think, wow. I think Logan is probably pretty pissed because Logan may or may not have been able to score points, but Alex certainly did not score points. So, what was the point of the swap? Like, now you have Logan, who's kind of like annoyed. You have Alex, who probably feels some type of way because now, like, he has a teammate that might feel, a little bit upset about the situation. You have the rest of the team maybe feeling upset about the decision, and he didn't score any points for the team. And now Logan is supposed to be like, oh yeah, cool, man. Like, great job trying
So
to
glad.
get points.
Yeah, so glad you took my car.
Yes.
Great job, dude. I would be so
You hustle.
petty. I would be so rude
Absolutely.
about it. I don't think that's in Logan's character.
No.
You think that this was probably so much pressure for Alex Albon to know, okay, if I'm going to take my teammate's car, I need to get into the points. So I'm sure he feels really guilty that he didn't. I'm sure he's not feeling the best. I really hope that James Vows, our corporate king, our well spoken king, our empathetic king, is going heavy on the team building over the next however many days until Japan, because things are going to be tense at Williams. And your other driver is going to feel very tossed aside and very disregarded and like he was treated unfairly because he kind of was. I really wish that Alex had gotten in the points and this could have all felt worth it. But, what did he get? P12?
I think P11. He just
We
slipped.
just missed the points. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Alex was close to getting points, but not quite there. And I'm sure he probably did place ahead of where Logan was going to be. But P11 and I don't know, 17 doesn't really matter. Still
Yeah.
not getting points either way. So I think, maybe we should have just let Logan drive the car.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Talking about other beef amongst the grid, Yuki and Danny. What is happening there? I saw that they unfollowed each other on Instagram. There has definitely been some tension between the two of those drivers.
Yeah, I mean, we ended the race with Yuki in P8 and Daniel in P12, which is actually a little better than I thought Daniel did. I thought he was in like P18. Yuki ended up getting bumped up to P7 because of Fernando's penalty. They're a little closer than I thought they were, and that's pretty impressive that he made it up to P12 because I think he started in P17 or 18. But also, there were 3 DNFs. So I don't know
There
if
were
it's
3 DNFs.
that impressive.
Yeah, there were 3 DNFs. You have Alpine, who is struggling. You have Sauber, who also were struggling with, the pit stops. So does that even count? That's where I'm conflicted, is that VCarb has all of Red Bull's identity in a car. Why is it
Mhm.
that Haas was able to score points? Because Haas is not known to be a good car. I think even, I don't know who said it, but I think it was Hulkenberg who was like, yeah, the car is crap. Like it like really is hard to drive it.
Mhm.
And like even him and K-Mag are able to be like in the midfield grid. Like that's
Mhm.
impressive. They don't have the same kind of like hardware component stack as VCarb. So Yuki is where I expect him to be. Daniel, come on. Like, I don't know. I hate to say it because I do like Daniel, but just seeing how he was getting beat by Haas twice, I don't know if it's a car thing anymore.
Mhm.
And I really don't want to like say it. Daniel Ricciardo fans, please do not come after me. I love Daniel Ricciardo. I just don't know if he has it in him anymore.
Yeah, Daniel was a phenomenal driver during his time at Red Bull. I think when he moved to Renault, it was very, very clear that the issue was the car. Renault took a downturn. They weren't doing great, just generally speaking. And then he decided to move to McLaren, and he was also saying it was the car. But Lando was doing fine. And I understand, like, not every driver is compatible with every car. But now he's back in a car that's more similar to the Red Bull, and he's still not really doing well. P18 to P12 looks impressive, but like we said, there were 3 DNFs in between there. I like Daniel. I want to see him do well, but I think we talked about this a lot in the Saudi Arabia episode. It was so exciting to see a rookie on the grid, and I think it is kind of time to have some of the drivers that have gotten a pretty big chance and let them go on their way and bring in new talent. I would love to see what Liam Lawson could do with this car. I also think Red Bull as an organization can be a little ruthless, and I would be curious to know if they are giving Daniel the same sort of ultimatum that they gave Nick DeVries last season of like, get it together or you're out mid-season, because this has been like 3 races, if not doing so great. And I saw a lot of people trying to say, well, he did do well in quali. It just got deleted because of track limits. And I'm like, are you really doing well if you can't stay in between the lines? Like, that's part of the job.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Like I would love to see Liam Lawson. Obviously would hate to see Daniel Ricciardo go,
Mhm.
but the past few years haven't really been his year, even as he is trying to like work on his driving, and he's working with a car that might not be up to snuff with the top tier. I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah, I think if he doesn't get it together, I think this will be his last season. And I think if he doesn't get it together, there's a very good chance that they'll replace him mid-season, or that they should consider doing that, because that would be fair. They've done that to other people before. So I don't know why he would get special treatment. Those are my thoughts on Yuki and Daniel and the Logan and Alex situation. Hello, everybody. This is Emily back at you from the editing room. We realized in editing that we did not include anything about updates to our bingo card, and we have quite a lot to check off this week. So, just to recap, in the previous 2 races, we were able to check off reserve driver races. We were able to check off Oscar doing better than Lando, beef between drivers, Lewis and Charles content, petty radio messages, max 10 plus second lead. And I think that was it. So with Australia, we get to check off quite a few. I feel fully confident that it is time to check off the Carlos Sainz villain era because he slayed it in this race. I'm also going to say we can check off non-Red Bull win, obviously. We can check off, I think someone overtakes Max. I know Carlos kind of overtook him because of the car issues, but we're going to say that it can count. So I think that's all. Those 3 more things. We are very close to bingo. And if Checo retires or Logan gets points and influencers are in Miami, we may be very close to bingo. So stay tuned.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty much all of my thoughts for this race. I'm so happy that Emily and I were able to stay up for it because it sure was an exciting one. I think I would have been really bummed out if I did miss it. Like, I would have felt so much FOMO. So I'm glad that we stuck it through. And yeah, I'm super excited for the race in Japan as well. Japan holds a very special place in my heart because that was the first race I actually watched. It was a boring one. So hopefully 2024 in Japan will be a different experience. But I guess with that being said, we will not have a Chatterbox Box episode next week in honor of Easter Sunday. If anyone celebrates, I hope you guys all enjoy the time spent with family and friends. And we're going to take a little bit of a breather as well. I think one of the things coming up is that we will be reading the last book in the Dirty Air series called Redeemed by Lauren Asher. So if you want to get a little bit of a head start before we actually chat about it on the podcast, feel free. And since we have already read it, feel free to drop any comments in our socials, Chatterbox Box on TikTok or Chatterbox Box F1 on Instagram, Threads, and I believe YouTube.
Yes, we are giving ourselves a little bit of a spring break. It's traditionally spring break week in the US this week with Easter coming up. So we hope that you also have a restful and chill week and that you have a good Easter if you celebrate. And yeah, thanks everyone for listening. We would love, 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 love to hear your thoughts on the Australian Grand Prix and how you felt about it and some of your reactions. So definitely reach out at any of our socials and let us know what you think.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Over and out.
Bye.
Bye, F1 world.
No, not yet, not yet.
Oh no, I'm saying like bye for today.